Ghostbusters, Vigo's Revenge. The stairwell was dimly lit, with flickering fluorescent bulbs casting an eerie glow over the chipped concrete steps. Peter Venkman held his proton pack at the ready as he crept upwards, listening intently for any spectral disturbances. It had been a routine bust so far, Class 3 full roaming vapor reported haunting the abandoned building. Ever since defeating Vigo years ago, the Ghostbusters had settled into dealing with the more mundane ghosts that plagued New York. Still, Peter had learned to never underestimate even the most basic spooks. Getting anything on the PKE meter, he whispered into his headset. In the Ecto-1 idling outside, Egon Spengler studied the device carefully. I'm detecting residual readings on the third floor, but no substantial spikes that would indicate an active entity. Peter sighed. Another wild goose chase. Don't these people have anything better to do than harass the Ghostbusters with fake calls? I wouldn't dismiss it so quickly, Egon chided. Many true paranormal encounters are initially reported as dubious. It's our duty to investigate every claim thoroughly. Yeah, protecting the innocent, upholding the good fight, yada yada, Peter mocked lightly. Still, he continued up the stairs, proton wand ready. He knew Egon was right, their work was important, even if most days it involved tedious busts like this. Rounding a corner, Peter entered a debris-strewn hallway. One door hung crookedly from a single hinge, creaking in an imagined breeze. Strange stains marred the peeling wallpaper. Yo, spook! You here? I heard this is prime real estate for ghosts looking to haunt up the place, Peter called out. Silence answered. He was about to turn back when a loud crash came from behind the broken door. Ha! Gotcha! Peter proclaimed. He leapt through the doorway, proton pack powered up. But the room was empty. A shattered window let in faint moonlight, illuminating the bare floor and a few discarded newspapers fluttering in the wind. Peter shook his head ruefully. Seemed Egon's instrument had picked up nothing more than the normal ambient traces haunting this creepy old building. Still, before leaving, Peter took out his PKE meter, scanning the room thoroughly. As expected, it registered only the faintest supernatural presence. All right, looks like this was another false alarm, Peter reported. Let's pack it up and grab some dinner. I'm craving Chinese. Sorry to disappoint Peter, but it seems their special chow mein will have to wait, Egon replied over the headset. I'm tracking multiple Class 4 apparitions converging on Central Park. Peter hurried downstairs to the waiting Ecto-1. Well, why didn't you say so? Fire up the sirens, Spengs. It's time to bust some heads. Winston Zeddemore steered the Ecto-1 through chaotic city streets, weaving expertly between lanes packed with taxis and delivery trucks. Blaring sirens announced their urgency to the traffic jams. In the passenger seat, Ray Stantz fiddled with the radio, finally tuning it to a news station. Reporting live from Central Park, where widespread paranormal activity has been reported, the reporter was saying. While the Ghostbusters have yet to arrive, eyewitnesses claim to have seen groups of transparent figures floating among the trees near strawberry fields. Many visitors have fled the scene, but some brave souls remain, attempting to capture footage of the extraordinary events. Sounds like we've got genuine spectral trouble brewing. Ray said. I've been monitoring PKE spikes all week, but nothing like this. Yeah, the readings are off the charts lately, Peter agreed from the back seat, reviewing data on his ever-present cell phone. Think it's just a random influx, or are the deadheads planning something? Hard to ascertain yet, Egon chimed in. But the concentrated surge in spectral energy in one location is unprecedented. I would advise caution. Winston hit the lights and sirens again, speeding the Ecto-1 through an intersection against traffic. Pedestrians stopped to gawk and snap photos. Caution, my middle name. Peter quipped. Let's toast this ghostly fiesta before things get out of hand. They pulled up along the perimeter of Central Park, which was crawling with tense NYPD officers. A liaison approached the Ecto-1. "Ghostbusters, thank God you're here," the officer said. "My men keep reporting multiple apparitions, but their bullets are useless. We need you to contain the threat so we can evacuate the area." "What about civilians?" Winston asked. The officer shook his head grimly. "We're doing our best, but there are still people trapped deeper in the park. Don't worry, we'll vaporize the spooks and rescue the citizens," Ray assured confidently. "Ghostbusters, let's move in." They adorned their beige jumpsuits and proton packs, adjusting the nuclear accelerators. If the PKE spikes were accurate, they would need the maximum power. Squaring their shoulders, the team ventured into Central Park, Ray leading with the PKE meter and Winston watching their six. The leafy paths were eerily silent. "Getting anything?" Peter whispered. Ray pointed up ahead where a stone bridge crossed a tranquil pond. There was a strange glow emanating from beneath the arch, hues of green and purple swirling ominously. Ray checked the PKE meter. "I've got multiple readings, all centered around that area." The Ghostbusters took up positions around the pond, Ray and Egon scanning the glow with special devices while Winston and Peter charged their proton packs. With a nod to each other, they fired streams of proton energy at the supernatural epicenter. A horrendous screech filled the air as three writhing green apparitions materialized in the trap beams. They twisted and contorted, mouths gaping in silent screams. "Crank up the juice," Peter called. With practiced coordination, the Ghostbusters concentrated their streams, wrangling the specters under control and inching the traps closer. One by one, the ghosts were sucked inside, sealed shut with a distinctive pop. "Think that was all of them?" Winston wondered. Egon consulted his PKE meter. "I'm still detecting significant spikes in multiple locations. This was just the start." Ray checked the containment unit indicator on the traps. "Then we better call in reinforcements. I have a feeling this is going to be a long night." Janine Melnitz reclined at her desk in the firehouse, idly chewing gum and reading a magazine. With the guys all out on a major bust, calls had died down for the night. A few reporters phoned earlier seeking a statement after rumors started spreading about a paranormal invasion in Central Park. Janine told them no comment as usual, let the boys share the details when they were ready. Her casual attitude vanished when the firehouse doors burst open and the Ghostbusters stumbled inside, uniforms smoking and proton packs charred. "Rough night?" she asked, rushing over to help Ray limp over to a chair. "You could say that," Winston grumbled, rotating his shoulder with a wince. "We got our butts handed to us by a new spook gang in town." Egon began removing his proton pack to check the damage. "Not just new, but organized," he clarified. "These entities exhibited strategic, almost militant behavior. They herded civilians into vulnerable locations and attempted to isolate each of us during confrontations. And they definitely were not there for the ambience of Central Park," Peter added flippantly, though his exhaustion showed through. "This pony and ghost show were looking to take over." Janine's tabloid magazine was swiftly forgotten as she listened to the team recount the night's events. The spike in supernatural activity had spread far beyond the initial bridge sighting. Ghosts attacked citizens throughout Central Park, terrifying crowds and overwhelming authorities. Even with backup from a few rookie Ghostbusters, containing the threat had strained their resources and stamina. "Did you at least bust all the spooks?" Janine asked hopefully. "We contained over 24 entities," Egon confirmed. "However, the PKE spikes never fully dissipated. I believe the ghostly activity was a coordinated effort from a centralized source." Ray nodded enthusiastically. "And the patterns were so unusual. Most ghosts we encounter are random class 3 and below. But these specters were at least class 7, exhibiting telekinesis, duplication, and even the ability to momentarily neutralize our packs. The levels of intelligence and collaboration were remarkable. Yeah, I was impressed too when Casper rammed me into a tree, Peter muttered. We'd better start researching entities capable of this type of influence, Winston said seriously. Something sparked this ghostly crime wave, and until we figure out who, those souls won't rest easy. Janine cracked her knuckles and turned to the computer. I'll start compiling a dossier on potential ghostly gang leaders. We've got a lot of enemies who could be behind this, both old and new. She tried not to let nerves creep into her voice. They had overcome tough odds before, but something about tonight unsettled her. If an organized supernatural force had set its sights on New York, the Ghostbusters were in for the fight of their lives. Egon tinkered with the containment unit, adjusting dials and checking screens. The entire system had been overloaded after capturing nearly 36 specters last night. A few more, and the grid could have failed entirely. Egon made a mental note to upgrade the unit's capacity again soon. Their encounter in Central Park hinted at newly emerging supernatural entities that could prove formidable. Behind him, Peter kicked back in a chair, reviewing the photos Ray had snapped during the chaos. Most were blurry shots of indistinct ghostly shapes. But Peter paused on one that showed a flickering green figure in Victorian clothing. He held the image next to an artist's sketch of a notorious 19th-century gangster. Uncanny resemblances were evident despite the ghost's wavering appearance. "Hey Spangs, check this out," Peter said, flashing the two images. "Looks like one of our new pals might have died a long time before the invention of the pursuing afterlife invention." Egon glanced over with interest. "You believe the entity Ray photographed is the ghost of a historic criminal?" "Seems more than coincidental," Peter pointed out. "What are the odds baby-faced Nelson just happens to turn up in Central Park the same night a new ghost gang appears?" "Astronomically low," Egon agreed. "This suggests intent and planning. Perhaps we should investigate any significant deaths or disturbances that occurred at those locations where spectral activity was highest." Peter pumped a fist. "Now you're speaking my language. We bring the pain to them for once." He headed upstairs, nearly colliding with Janine coming down. "Whoa, slow down flyboy," she chided. "Where's the fire?" "New lead on the spook goons," Peter shared excitedly. "Check the city records for anything shady that went down where we fought the big baddies last night. Egon thinks they're resurrected crooks with grudges." Janine lifted an eyebrow, impressed. "Smart thinking. I'll pull the records and make some calls. Maybe if we can ID the ghosts, we'll figure out what they want." A clang echoed from the garage as Ray emerged, wiping grime from the Ecto-1 repairs. "You guys onto something?" he asked hopefully. Peter waved the images. "We're investigating connections between the phantom hoodlums and their old stomping grounds. Where'd they first appear last night?" Ray pulled out his notebook, flipping through sketched diagrams and scrawled pages. "Here, Strawberry Fields. Then the ravine near West Drive. The mall and Bethesda Fountain." "I'm on it," Janine called, already typing away. Ray headed to help Egon with the containment unit while Peter studied their map of ghost sightings, searching for clues in the locations. For the first time since encountering the new spectral threat, he felt a spark of excitement. The game was afoot. "How many cups have you had?" Winston asked as he entered the lab. Ray was practically vibrating, clutching a steaming mug and pacing around piles of open books. Maps and printouts covered every surface. "Only 2, Ray said defensively. At Winston's knowing look, he amended, "Okay, 5 or 6. But we're so close to a breakthrough." I've been cross-referencing the sightings, Janine's records, historical data, it all interconnects. Winston took in the chaotic scene, bemused. Ray had always been the intensely obsessive researcher of the group. Still, he hadn't seen this level of paranormal zeal from him since Gozer. All right man, hit me. What have you pieced together so far? Ray launched excitedly into an explanation. So based on the locations, we linked many of the ghosts to notorious crimes committed there in the past, right? But other areas didn't have specific criminal events. So I expanded the search, and I found a pattern. Nearly every hot zone correlates to significant supernatural occurrences recorded throughout history. He grabbed a map labeled with multiple pins and threads linking locations into a web. See here, Strawberry Fields, site of our first encounter. Multiple ley lines cross that point, which Egon confirmed creates a natural weak spot between dimensions. Ray pointed to other marked locations. The ravine housed ancient Native American burial grounds. The lake skirting the mall is rumored to be haunted by those drowned for accusations of witchcraft centuries ago. And the Bethesda Fountain, let me guess, also lies on an intersection of magical energy or a portal to the underworld. Winston finished. Exactly. Ray exclaimed. Don't you see? These locations are supernatural nexuses, the ghosts didn't choose them randomly. Something, or someone, is strategically exploiting the existing spiritual lines and channels. Winston stared at the map with dawning unease. Ray was right, this was no coincidence. A cold professionalism seemed to guide the ghost's actions so far. But to what end? At that moment, Janine entered, carrying a thick folder. Found something interesting in the archives, she called. A series of rituals recorded in the 1600s by a secret society. They involve opening portals for spirits to cross over, get this, by accessing power lines at convergence points across the city. Winston and Ray shared a look. Ray voiced what they both were thinking. Whoever is organizing these ghosts, they're trying to open a permanent doorway to the spirit world within New York. We need to stop them before they succeed and unleash who knows what. This wasn't just a turf war with a new ghost gang, the stakes were rising by the hour. And the Ghostbusters still had no clue who they were truly up against. Peter tossed aside another book on spirit summoning and magical rituals. 3 straight hours of researching the occult left his eyes dry and head throbbing. This would be a great time for that enchanted pizza I wished for, he muttered. The only response was the thrum of machines and soft scratches of pen on paper as Egon took meticulous notes nearby. Peter wasn't even sure the scientist had heard him. Yo, Spengs, what do you think about this whole sitch? Peter asked loudly, stretching in his seat. We know who the baddies are now, well, not exactly who, but we've got enough dirt from their past shady lives to fill the Hudson. Egon glanced up, realizing Peter was addressing him. In terms of the nature and intentions of these entities, I concur there is sufficient data to make logical deductions. Peter rolled his eyes good-naturedly. I mean more in the soul sense. We've busted plenty of ghosts, but these specters were pretty bad dudes when they were alive. Do you think that makes them, I dunno, different to bust? Setting down his pen, Egon pondered the question. You raise an intriguing ethical quandary. While our mandate is to contain all supernatural disturbances, perhaps more care should be taken when dealing with humanized entities versus amorphous Class 5 apparitions. Right, I don't feel bad about busting a blob, but blasting the ghost of John Dillinger in the face with proton packs seems harsh. Peter trailed off. Egon gave a rare laugh. Harsh indeed. But remember, they are no longer human, simply echoes of strong emotions and past events. Though based on our duty as protectors of the living, some consideration of their former state seems morally correct. Both men sat in pensive silence until Janine entered. "Hey guys, found something else you should see about that secret society I mentioned." She paused, taking in their conflicted expressions. "Everything okay? You both look freaked." Peter waved airily. "Just pondering the ethics of blasting ghosts of gangsters into oblivion." Janine blinked. "Ah, a casual Tuesday then." She smirked and headed back upstairs, leaving the philosophers to their debate. Some days the line between business and personal blurred. But the Ghostbusters had handled morally ambiguous dilemmas before. And just like in science, the ethics often became clear once new evidence came to light. A fresh autumn breeze stirred the fallen leaves blanketing the ground. Winston surveyed the remote forest trail that led to the hidden cove. During their research into the spirit sightings across New York, Ray had discovered legends about a cave in this area with mystical properties. They theorized it could serve as a portal to the spirit world, one the ghosts might return to as they staged their strategic takeover. "Think this is it?" Peter asked, joining Winston overlooking the secluded valley. Dense trees obscured much of the view. But they could make out a dark opening in the rocky cliffs below. Ray consulted the map, then pointed down enthusiastically. "That's the place described in the occult records we found. It has to be the portal the ghosts are exploiting." Egon held up a PKE meter, sweeping the area slowly. It immediately began spiking with a high-pitched whine. "There is definite evidence of intense supernatural activity. We should exercise extreme caution in approaching." The team picked their way down the wooded slope. Winston took point, proton rifle ready. If their theory was correct, this portal could be their first glimpse into the true nature of the threat they faced. Approaching the cleft in the cliff face, Ray examined the ancient stone pillars flanking the opening. Strange runes and symbols were carved into the weathered rock. He brushed soil away, tracing the intricate patterns. "These match the ritual markers from the archives," Ray confirmed. "Definitely the work of that occult group." "Can you decipher anything useful?" Peter asked. "A warning would be nice. Turn back now or your soul will be devoured, that kind of thing." Ray shook his head. "It's an obscure derivative of Old Norse. I recognize a few portal-related words, but the rest is obscure. We'll need to get rubbings and analyze back at the lab." Winston eyed the gaping cave mouth. There was a pale glow and the sound of whispers emanating from within. "Whatever's happening in there, it ain't natural. Let's get what we came for and bail." Carefully, they approached the portal, meters held warily ahead. The whispers resolved into voices, some pleading, others threatening. Horrible crimes and dark rituals echoed from the past. Indexers spun wildly, confirming high volumes of spiritual energy. "Fascinating," Egon muttered, risking a few steps nearer. Cross-dimensional conduits typically generate these types of auditory and visual phenomena, but seldom at such intensity. Abruptly, the indistinct voices resounded in unison, "Leave this place." The team staggered back under the force of the command. A ghostly face flickered into view, pale eyes flashing. Then it vanished as quickly as it came. "Okay, message received," Peter declared, backing quickly away. "We're outta here." With relief, the Ghostbusters retreated up the trail. Now they had confirmation, the ghosts were using this cave as a portal between worlds. And something sinister was intent on keeping it open. Egon sat in the lab, reviewing the extensive data gathered at the cave portal. Psychokinetic samples showed powerful, malignant forces at work. Combined with the occult history Ray had researched, this pointed to an organized effort by spirits to infiltrate the material world. But who was orchestrating this uprising? The cave encounter provided a clue, the violent threat that repelled their presence. Perhaps identifying that spectral guardian would reveal who controlled the portal on the other side. However, investigating further would require breaching the interdimensional gateway once more. Despite the risks, curiosity compelled Egon to discover what lay beyond. He gathered the others to outline a plan. While our previous incursion was ill-advised, I believe a rapid transit of the portal could enable crucial insights before another expulsion occurs. Peter smirked. I'll pretend that made sense. So we're gonna jump through this ghostly rabbit hole and hope not to get vaporized. Basically, yes, Egon confirmed. With proper equipment and haste, we should survive long enough to document the transdimensional environment and entities present. Winston shook his head vehemently. No way. That portal is bad news. But Ray was practically bouncing with excitement. This is an unprecedented chance. We could be the first living humans to observe a spectral dimension. Seeing Winston's hesitation, Ray clapped a hand on his shoulder. It's risky, but think what we could learn. We need to know what we're up against. His enthusiasm was contagious. Winston finally nodded. All right, but we get in and out quick. No sightseeing tours. 10-4. Peter grinned. Come on gang, let's go where no Ghostbuster has gone before. Soon the four stood at the cave entrance once more. Egon passed out miniaturized cameras and meters to document their brief crossing. With a shared determined nod, they switched on their proton packs and plunged into the portal. The haunting voices returned, swirling around them. Peter resisted clamping his hands over his ears. A kaleidoscope of ghostly scenery flashed past. They were moving at incredible speed through the spiritual plane. Without warning, they emerged from the vortex into a bizarre, decaying facsimile of New York City. Ectoplasmic fog clung to crumbling high-rises and empty streets. Strange spirits drifted aimlessly, as if locked in memories. Fascinating, Egon remarked. A quasi-physical constructed realm generated from psychic impressions of. His analysis was interrupted by spectral entities pouring from buildings, rushing toward the portal. Everybody out, now! Winston yelled. They leapt back into the swirling lights, arriving with a thud on the cave floor seconds later. Peter let out a whooping laugh. We made it. Got enough for the scrapbook? Ray was already flipping eagerly through images. Each Ghostbuster had managed to capture snapshots of the ghostly dimension. Finally, they had a glimpse into the reality they would soon need to face. Showdown with Ghostly Gang. A sleek black sedan glided down the rain-slicked streets, its destination clear. In the back seat, three figures sat in tense silence, watching the city lights stream past. Winston checked his watch. We're still early. Once more through the plan. Ray nodded and resumed briefing. These rituals always require multiple spirit conduits to focus energy. That's why the ghost sightings happened across different locations. But to open and stabilize a portal, they need a central point. Egon adjusted his glasses. Hence, the peak in spectral activity we remotely detected at the old Morgan Iron Works factory. And your occult texts mentioned midnight on the winter solstice as the optimal time, Winston added. Giving us. He checked his watch again. Just under 2 hours to crash this party. Ray flipped through printouts showing the factory's layout. The biggest event will happen on the main foundry floor. So Winston takes point on the ground while Egon, Peter and I rappel through the skylights. Once the portal is open, we concentrate fire to destabilize its energy flow. Then it should implode safely. Peter shrugged nonchalantly, though his foot tapped with excess energy. Easy peasy. Find the brainiac ghost, bust his operation, save the day. We've got this. They pulled up a block from the abandoned factory. Tonight, it was far from abandoned, surrounded by a spectral glow from within. The Ghostbusters quietly slipped into position, their plans smooth from years of experience. Soon they had infiltrated the perimeter, avoiding patrolling entities static with power. Winston crept onto a high catwalk overlooking the foundry. Below, figures in dark robes attended to mystical braziers and instruments. A growing vortex swirled in the room's center. Checking his watch one last time, Winston signaled the others. Simultaneously, the skylights shattered as 3 proton streams blasted into the ritual epicenter. Chaos erupted in the chamber. The robed figures scattered in confusion. At the head of the room, an imposing ghost materialized, unleashing a furious roar. "Who dares?" it thundered. "I will flay your souls." It raised spectral claws toward the skylights. "Not if I zag you first, Vigo," Peter shouted from his repelling line. He swooped down, driving the ghost back with rapid proton blasts. As planned, the concentrated fire disrupted the spirit's hold on the portal, which flickered precariously. Snarling, Vigo grabbed a metal pillar, hurling it at Egon on his line. He swerved, narrowly avoiding the hit. Winston opened fire from the catwalk, pinning Vigo between relentless proton streams. The portal wheezed, like a dying battery. With a final burst, the vortex imploded in a blinding flash. The remaining ghosts vanished instantly. Shielding their eyes, the team looked up to see Vigo escaping through the roof. His defiant roar echoed behind. The factory fell eerily silent. Peter let out a whooping laugh as they gathered below. Talk about ring around the rosy. We smoked them. He high-fived Winston. But Egon and Ray shared a grim look. The portal was disabled, but Vigo had escaped. And they now knew exactly who they were up against, an ancient evil back for revenge. Their battle was just beginning. Back at the firehouse, the mood was sober as the team absorbed the implications of their discovery. "I thought we destroyed Vigo years ago," Winston said, shaking his head. "How's he powerful enough to lead a ghostly uprising now?" "His remnant must have endured within the spectral realm, accumulating strength over time," Egon theorized. "Until recently, when he harnessed enough energy to manifest and organize the lesser spirits." "Okay, big bad Vigo's behind the ghostpocalypse, check." Peter spun a finger. "But why wait so long for the revenge trip? And what's the end goal here?" Ray flipped through a thick book on occult history. "This mentions Vigo belonged to an ancient society of sorcerers. They sought immortality through portals that would bind the realms of living and dead." He looked up gravely. "If Vigo succeeds in opening a permanent, city-wide gateway." Winston finished the thought. "We'll have an invasion of ghosts like nothing we've handled before." Somber silence filled the room. They had won this battle, but Vigo had the knowledge and devotion to try again. Permanently sealing the portals wouldn't be enough. To save New York, they had to take down Vigo once and for all. Peter stood abruptly, clapping his hands. "All right, enough moping. We've got a catastrophic spirit escapade to prevent. I say we go on offense for once." He turned to Egon and Ray. "Can we use those portals as a two-way street?" Egon raised his eyebrows, intrigued. "Theoretically, yes. The basic energetic principles are sound. We could modify the packs with an ectotether to pull us back," Ray added enthusiastically. "Good thinking, Peter." A slow grin spread across Peter's face. "Then what are we waiting for? Let's gear up and take this fight straight to Ghost World." The familiar thrill of a new challenge energized them. Vigo may have gotten the drop on them once before, but now the Ghostbusters had the whole team together. And they had faced far worse threats than one arrogant medieval sorcerer. As they raced to prepare for their next mission, Peter's rallying cheer echoed through the firehouse. Ghostbusters, let's roast this big marshmallow. Winston straightened his brown jumpsuit, double-checking belts and equipment. Around him, the others did final gear checks, reviewing mission details. The atmosphere was charged with restless energy. Soon they would attempt to cross through the portal into Vigo's domain. If their calculations were correct, the brief path they blazed could be stabilized just long enough to confront him on his own spectral ground. They had the element of surprise this time. Still, apprehension gnawed at Winston. Part of it was anxiety about their safety. Rappelling through interdimensional gates using experimental tech was risky on a normal day. But his unease ran deeper than physical concern. Winston was troubled by the morality of their preemptive attack. So far the ghosts had initiated the conflicts. But now the Ghostbusters planned to strike first, on foreign ground. It felt excessive, somehow. As a born and bred New Yorker, Winston understood fighting hard for your home. But they weren't soldiers. Scientists and dreamers, maybe, but not an assault squad. If Vigo fell, would others simply rise again to continue the fight? How far were they willing to go for victory in a war with no end? Winston kept his doubts to himself as they drove to the portal site. The others were committed to this mission. He would see it through too. But privately, Winston resolved to act with wisdom. If the chance presented itself, he would try diplomacy before force. They gathered at the cave entrance, muted by tension and night sounds. Peter gave a thumbs up. Into the breach once more. Steeling themselves, they stepped into the swirling green mists between realities. Moments later, the spectral copyscape coalesced around them. The eerie city now bristled with armed ghosts on patrol. Hugging cover, the Ghostbusters infiltrated quickly toward Vigo's tower lair. So far, so good. Winston hoped answers would come soon. But for now, he focused his thoughts on each step of their task. Whatever the outcome, he trusted this team with his life. Together, they would find the right path. Ray adjusted the straps of his proton pack as they ascended an imposing staircase within Vigo's stronghold. Showdowns in enemy lairs usually happened on staircases, in his experience. Sure enough, the imposing doors ahead burst open. Vigo emerged in a rage, flanked by a ghostly honor guard. You dare trespass here again? He no longer looked human, skin molted away to reveal a demonic spirit beneath. I offered mercy once if you turned back. Now your souls will feed my army. He launched a volley of psychic energy. The team scattered, taking cover behind spectral pillars. Ray exchanged fire with a wraith-like enforcer. Out the corner of his eye, he saw Winston wave briefly to get Vigo's attention. Vigo. We just want to chat, buddy. Can't we make a deal? Winston called out. Ray shook his head in disbelief. Negotiating now? It was too late for pleasantries. They had come to take Vigo down. But Vigo actually paused in his assault. He stared hard at Winston as though truly seeing him for the first time. You have a pure spirit, human. He drew closer while his minions kept Ray and the others pinned. Join my crusade, and you will be rewarded. Winston stood firm. I fight to protect people and maintain balance. Your goals threaten life. Ray tensed, ready to dive in if needed. But Vigo merely hissed in disdain. The balance favors you mortals too much already. We will change that. He raised a clawed hand toward Winston. But I sense goodness in you. For that, I grant you swift passage to the beyond when the time comes. With that, he blasted Winston into the wall. Crying out, Ray rushed to help him up. Minor injuries, thankfully. Meanwhile, Vigo issuing a screeching retreat. His guards moved to surround them. Peter fired a warning shot. That's our cue too. Pull. In a flash, their tethers yanked them back through the portal to safety. Ray's heart raced as he caught his breath in the real-world cave. Winston put a hand on his shoulder. "Thanks for having my back. But we're in this fight together." Ray nodded firmly. To the end. Though Vigo had shown a surprising moment of mercy, he was still their enemy. The Ghostbusters would keep fighting to protect their home from chaos and darkness. Ray just hoped the light within them never went out. Chaos erupted on the city streets as spectral entities rampaged unchecked. Cars lay abandoned, windows were shattered, spectral fires raged in buildings. Vigo had finally succeeded in opening multiple, stable portals connecting the realms. Ghosts flooded through, unleashing pent-up rage against the living world. At the epicenter stood Vigo atop an ectoplasmic tower, overseeing the destruction. The Ghostbusters plowed through the Ecto-1, evading attacking spirits. All around them, civilians fled the onslaught. "End of the line, boys," Winston yelled as they screeched to a stop at the tower's base. Grabbing their gear, the four heroes stepped out to confront Vigo one final time. "So the foolish mortals have come to beg for mercy at last." Vigo sneered down at them. "You are too late. My new kingdom has risen." To emphasize his point, he directed ghosts to dive bomb the Ecto-1. The vehicle erupted in flames. "Hey, watch the paint job!" Peter shouted, blasting the apparitions away. He turned to Vigo with pure defiance. "We're not here to chat, Vijay. This portal party is over." Roaring in rage at the diminutive nickname, Vigo transformed into an enormous spectral demon. The towering monster swiped at them. They rolled clear, unleashing proton streams at its legs. The concentrated fire had some effect, driving it back momentarily. But Vigo regenerated fast. He stomped his foot, sending shockwaves cracking through the pavement. "You prolong the inevitable. Once I consume your life forces, none can stand against me." "That's where you're wrong, chump," Peter shot back. "You've got to go through all of us first. We're a matched set." Together, the team advanced through the rubble, proton wands raised. They coordinated blasts in shifting pairs to evade Vigo's attacks while maintaining fire. The furious spirit struggled to deflect the onslaught. "We can seal the portals, Vigo," Ray shouted. "It doesn't have to end like this." But Vigo was beyond reason now. With a feral scream, he brought all four arms down to crush them. The Ghostbusters rolled aside just in time. The crushing force left Vigo momentarily prone. Now was their only chance. As one, they unleashed the full force of their proton packs directly at his head. Vigo thrashed wildly, wailing in rage and pain. But the concentrated energy overwhelmed him. With a piercing shriek, his form dissolved into ectoplasm. Around them, the other spirits flickered and vanished as the portals rapidly sealed shut. The towers crumbled, leaving only scorched rubble. Not sure if it was finally over, the exhausted Ghostbusters huddled together, proton wands ready for any last threats. But the city street remained empty. Egon scanned with a PKE meter. "Spectral energy levels are returning to normal baseline," he confirmed. They had actually done it, stopped Vigo and his army for good. As the adrenaline drained away, an exhausted relief set in. "So who's up for shawarma?" quipped Peter. Laughing and shaking their heads, the Ghostbusters turned towards home. The war was over. Time to start cleaning up the mess that was left. A light rain fell as the Ghostbusters gathered at the largest portal site downtown. It was the day after their victory over Vigo, though the word hardly encompassed the scope of what had transpired. 5 city blocks were left in ruins around the wrecked Morgan Ironworks building that had housed Vigo's main gateway. Surveying the damage now, they began to truly grasp the scale of destruction and lives impacted. While the portals had vanished with Vigo's defeat, Egon confirmed residual pockets of instability still lingered. If left unchecked, these fractures could gradually allow spirit energy to leak through once more. So the exhausted but diligent team began the meticulous process of identifying and sealing each crack with proton fire, just as they had with the Gozer incident years ago. They moved methodically through the decimated blocks, scanning and closing each rift. The location held new meaning now as the site of so much struggle and loss, but also hope, perseverance, and life reclaimed. The work was slow and draining. But the Ghostbusters kept at it hour after hour as the light faded, until every last fracture was fully mended. They would not leave the slightest risk of Vigo's legacy enduring. With the last weak echo sealed, the four stood together surveying their handiwork. The rain had ceased and stars now peeked through scattered clouds. No unearthly glows marred the cityscape. New York's living energy flowed uncorrupted once more. So what now? Winston finally asked, voicing the question on all their minds. Peter clapped him on the back. Now, we take a nice long nap. Then start the cleanup. And after that? He waved expansively. Wherever the wind blows us. Their hearts were heavy with the losses suffered in the battle. But gazing at the stars and city lights, the Ghostbusters also felt renewed hope. The immediate crisis was over. Now came the healing and rebuilding, both in the physical realm and their own spirits. Together they would face the future, one day at a time. Ray slowly swept the cluttered lab space, sorting damaged equipment and books. The vast chamber still showed signs of chaos from the urgent preparations before their battle with Vigo. Now he had time to put things back in order. The methodical work soothed his restless mind. They had succeeded, against all odds, in defeating Vigo and his ghostly army. The living world was safe once more. But troubling questions lingered for Ray. Had unleashing their full destructive proton power been necessary? Or had they become drunk on their own abilities? Since becoming a Ghostbuster, Ray constantly towed the line between genius and madness. His passion fueled breakthrough innovations. Yet it also led to dangerous obsessions at times. Had he let zeal for scientific discovery cloud ethical judgment regarding the ghosts themselves? Some, like Slimer, became friends over time. Even Vigo warranted debate regarding the morality of their unilateral actions. The ghosts were not demons, but echoes of humanity's own failings. As Egon often mused, the barriers between worlds were thinning, requiring new evolutionary understanding. Ray pondered these dilemmas while returning order to the chaotic lab. Similarly, their methods would need to evolve as the world changed around them. Simple buckets of protons were no longer enough. If humanity hoped to advance peacefully into this new era of interconnectivity, wisdom and empathy would be essential. The answer, as always, lay in the intersection of mind and heart. Ray would make it his mission going forward to walk that fine line with more thought and care. And he trusted the Ghostbusters would do the same together. After all, building a better future required both scientific rigor and an open hand. Winston stood staring up at the Ghostbusters sign, seeing not the proud logo but past the rubble and smoke obscuring it just yesterday. Repair efforts were underway all over the city, though some scars ran deeper than mortar and steel. The look in people's eyes told that story, exhaustion muted by flickers of resilience. They had needed a win after losing so much. Morale and unity remained fragile, with fears of the unknown looming. But slowly, steadily, the pieces were being put back together. That started with each personal decision to face another day with hope. Their own team was likewise picking up the shards. Janine had kept operations running day and night during the crisis. Her quick thinking and compassion helped citizens stay safe. She was the heart of Ghostbusters' spirit. Egon and Ray now used their genius fixing the tech and developing protective measures from their research. Egon seemed renewed with fascination over the insights from their spectral journeys. He spoke eagerly about new studies to continue. And Peter was the restless spirit, itching to be out doing, making people laugh, helping them heal. His energy and humor lifted them from despair time after time. Though flippant on the surface, Winston knew Peter felt things deeply. As for himself, Winston had always been the steady anchor, keeping them on an even keel. During the chaos and battles, his level thinking balanced the team's big personalities under pressure. That strength and wisdom would be crucial in the missions ahead, rebuilding their city and lives. Gazing up at the proud sign once more, Winston felt confident despite lingering hurts and doubts. As long as they stuck together, the Ghostbusters would keep watching over New York. Through light or darkness, their bonds held true. Egon studied reams of data gathered throughout their supernatural encounters. While the living world was now safeguarded, unstable psychic energies still fractured the dimensional boundaries after Vigo's incursion. If left unchecked, these disruptions could remanifest over time in dangerous ways. Egon hypothesized that targeted proton infusions could pacify and heal the lingering spiritual wounds, much like their treatment of the Gozer fracture previously. By mending the ethereal rifts, they could prevent future threats from emerging. After thorough calculations, he gathered Ray and Winston to present his proposal. "Fascinating," Ray remarked, reviewing the readings. "If we recalibrated our packs to transmit restorative resonance frequencies, the ideal dispersion through the membrane tiers would be achievable." Winston crossed his arms. "You lost me. We're gonna stitch up holes in the ghost world." Egon adjusted his glasses thoughtfully. "Crudely put, but accurate. These metaphysical lacerations must be addressed for true stability to be restored. We can heal both sides to be stronger together," Ray added enthusiastically. "Our team already has the skills and equipment. This could revolutionize the field." "Whoa, let's just focus on getting our world back in order first," Winston advised. But Egon was already scribbling modifications. "I agree, practical applications require further research. But even small-scale trials could produce invaluable insights." Seeing Egon's eagerness gave Winston pause. Their team balanced passionate curiosity with prudent caution. Perhaps a limited experiment was justified. "All right," Winston conceded. "But with every precaution. And non-interference is our policy otherwise." Egon nodded. "Naturally. We are simply housekeepers, attending to our metaphysical environment." Gathering modified packs and sensors, they prepared to cross the spectral plane once more. With luck, these house calls could tidy the neighborhood for all involved. After turmoil, restoring order and care was the only path forward, in both realms. Acknowledging consequences. Janine sorted through the waiting room's clutter with growing frustration. Ever since the team got back to regular ghost busting, they slipped back into slovenly bachelor habits. Half-finished food littered the tables. Stray equipment cluttered the floor. Did functioning adults really require so much nagging and picking up after? Honestly. A slimy bagel shifted in the trash, making her jump. She whirled, proton pistol aimed, before recognizing the familiar green blob. "Slimer. Don't scare me like that." The ghost gave an apologetic gurgle before oozing toward the containment unit. Janine watched him attempt swiping a card for access. Of course he had no fine motor skills. She swiped her own key and the doors slid open. "Whoops, sorry you got stuck in there overnight again," she said. Slimer just gave a cheerful burp and floated inside, likely looking to hang with imprisoned friends. Janine didn't have the heart to deny him. Technically against protocol, but no real harm done. She knew the sweet soul behind that goopy exterior. Closing the unit, Janine thought about how far her relationships with each ghost had come since those early terror-filled encounters. Fear blurred so much back then. Now she saw the beings behind the guises, multidimensional as humans. Some became trusted allies over time through open minds and hearts. If only they had extended that chance to Vigo initially. Shaking her head at the past, Janine tidied the front room with refreshed vigor. Second chances mattered, even for ghosts. No one was beyond redemption if offered sincerely. She would keep nurturing that spark, whether through understanding Slimer or forgiving the boy's thoughtless messes. Growth takes time. But each small effort chips away at fear's grip, opening space for hope. Janine felt that transformation within her daily. Though battles left scars, peace ultimately comes from releasing bitterness and embracing change. The hardest work happens in quiet human moments like these. Setting the stage for the future. Peter gazed up at the night sky, picking out familiar constellations from his days navigating the Ecto-1 across the city. The stars looked the same as before the disastrous portal events and Vigo showdown. But the Ghostbusters, and all of New York, had been through the ringer. They were changed, even if the city's outward rhythms and energy rebounded quickly. Peter still noticed the lingering trauma in people's eyes, the extra heartbeat of anxiety when sirens wailed too close. Vigo may be history, but the shared scars wouldn't immediately fade. You don't go through a war and come out unmarked. And you can't unsee the darkness exposed in humanity's spirit when chaos erupts. But with darkness also comes light. Heroism, compassion, resilience. When the chips were down, their team joined countless others who rose up in defiant hope. And even amid the destruction, there had been profound beauty and glimpses of amazing realms beyond normal reality. Peter was grateful the immediate crisis was over. But he suspected the ripples were just beginning in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. More battles likely lay ahead as the barriers between worlds grew ever thinner. When new threats emerged from the unknown, the Ghostbusters would rise to face them again. Regardless, the universe ticked on, uncaring about human troubles. Looking up at the infinite stars, Peter felt an odd comfort. Even amid turmoil, life endures. He stretched and headed inside to join the others. The stars would keep watch over this city until the Ghostbusters were needed again. For now, they all deserve some rest. Are the decorations straight? I can't tell anymore. Ray checked the banner Peter was hanging crookedly in the firehouse kitchen. Little lower on that side. We want it perfect. Janine called from the dining table she was setting. Hurry it up, the food just got here. Right on cue, Egon and Winston backed through the door, arms loaded with a truly massive stack of pizzas. Ray's mouth watered just looking at it. Think this is enough to feed a bunch of hungry ghost heads? Winston joked, sliding the boxes onto the table. He grabbed a slice, not bothering with a plate. That's the good stuff. Janine swatted his hand. BUP, wait for the guests. This is a nice party. The doorbell rang upstairs, and soon familiar voices drifted down. They're here. Ray cheered. He became a blur of activity, rushing to set out drinks, straighten chairs, turn on music. This celebration needed to be perfect after all they had endured. Soon the firehouse echoed with laughter and animated chatter as original Ghostbusters members mingled with the current team. Everyone looked relaxed and happy, retelling old stories and sharing new plans. Peter raised his glass for a toast. To absent friends, past adventures, and future days still to come. Glasses clinked all around. Ray gazed fondly at each dear face, his family, bound by memories and love. Later, as folks said their farewells with hugs and promises to visit, Ray surveyed the scattered party remnants needing tidying. It could wait till morning. Janine caught his eye with a knowing smile and nod. Tonight, their hearts were full. The storm had passed, but the real work of rebuilding still lay ahead, together. Their bonds had been tested and frayed, but never broken. In the end, love anchored them through the storm. Now they looked to the future with heads held high, Ghostbusters united.